As it stands right now, the Penguins do not have a first round pick, but they do have 6 picks as of now in the NHL draft this weekend. And helping me break it all down today is the one and only Taylor Haase.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. You can follow me on Twitter at synonym4wet. We thank you for making this your first listener watch of the day because we're your team every day. And before we get started, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. As I said at the top, today, I am joined by Taylor Haase of DK Pittsburgh Sports. You know her from just about everywhere else. She does a tremendous job covering the Penguins as well as their minor league system. And if you haven't been following along, she has been doing a great series breaking down some prospects that she spoke with at the NHL Scouting Combine. And that's what I'm bringing her on for today. We're going to talk about a few of those people that she spoke with because while the Penguins don't have a first round pick as of right now, that could change. We know that there could be some trades and some moves made to get them into the first round, but as it stands as we record, still no first round pick. So a lot of the players she interviewed at the Combine were really interesting ones because they were ranked in and about the area the Penguins have picks in the second round. And Taylor, I'm really excited to have you on the show because been a fan of your work for a long time. We met back when I was still working for the Nailers and Wheeling, and you were coming down and covering us. So welcome to the show. Excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I want to start off with one that got me very excited when I read about this one a few days ago, and that is forward Tanner Howe. He was one of your prospects that you interviewed at the Combine, 18-year-old. He played with Connor Bedard in the WHL. And everybody originally, as you wrote, thought, okay, this guy's just a product of Connor Bedard. He's got one of the most generational players on his line. That's just, he's knocking in points thanks to him. But then he kept it going this past season as Bedard graduated up to the NHL. And this is what stood out to me most. You described his play and he described his play as rat style. So tell me a little bit more about this guy because right now, I'm all in, and if they don't take him in the second round or he doesn't make it to the second round, I'm going to be heartbroken.
Yeah, he's someone that could go around where the Penguins pick. He's just kind of a strong 200-foot player. Having a good defensive game is really important to him. He used to look up to guys like Patrice Bergeron for that, but you mentioned the rat style of play. That's what he said he looks up to now, rat style hockey, and for that he named Martin Gallagher and Matthew Tkachuk. But so coming from the WHL, the Regina Pats, like you said, played with Bedard. There are some questions about, what he was going to do without Bedard this year. But I mean, his scoring was fine. Part of it is that Regina is like really bad in the WHL. Like they went for it with Bedard, but then now that he's gone, they're in a real rebuild. So he did kind of take a step back offensively. But then when you take into account that Bedard's gone, it's really just him rebuilding team. That was encouraging to me. Something also that is encouraging for me is that he went to the WHL a year before a lot of junior age prospects do. And so the way the NHL CHL transfer agreement works is players from those junior leagues, if they're eligible, they can't come and play in the AHL full-time until they're 20 or they have 4 seasons in junior hockey. And a season is 25 games and more. So that's why like Pickering was there this year. That's why Jaeger's probably going to go back to next year. So Tanner Howe, I mean, most of these guys are 18. So that means most of them are going to have, and most of them have 2 years of experience. So they're going to have for 2 years. Tanner Howe has 3 years of experience. So he's going to have to go back next year. But the year after that, he could be in the AHL. Which I think is really appealing for a team like the Penguins who kind of need their prospects fast. So yeah, I like him being a rat style hockey. There aren't really many guys like that in this range, I don't think.
Yeah, and I've been saying it on this show forever now, like basically since I joined last summer, is that the one thing, and I said it to our good friend Josh Yohe yesterday when I had him on the show, the Penguins just need some bastards. They need some guys who make it hard to play against. And this guy fits the bill. And I know that there's a little bit of a concern with him because he's 5'10", 184, but he's 18 years old. You know that the longer he plays, he's still got a little bit of growing to do. He's going to get that kind of training in to put on some muscle, gain some size, and really be able to fill out and play that style of hockey. But that's one guy who I am a big fan of after reading what you wrote about him, then going and watching some highlights. It's a guy that if he develops the way that he's supposed to, would be a huge asset in the Penguins system and could be here a little bit sooner than most. But also, I forgot to mention this for our listeners and our viewers here. Going to have to give a little bit of patience for Taylor here. She's out in Vegas for the draft, working on hotel Wi-Fi. So we might have a little bit of technical difficulty here, but stick with us. We appreciate it. So moving right along here, another one, switching and looking at defense, because we know how big of a need the Penguins have, especially in the prospect pipeline for defense, is Jesse Pulkkinen. He's a 19-year-old, big guy, 6'6", 219. And he was very good in under 20 play. And this is a guy who I think that you would expect him. And again, this is based off something you wrote and then watching his highlights. You would expect a guy that size to be a bruiser, to be a big physical guy, great defensively, but he's got some offensive upside. He's got a little bit of scoring touch.
Yeah, he's an offensive defense. Something I think the most interesting thing about him is that he's an overager. This is his second year drafted. He went undrafted last year. Kind of asked him. So first of all, Pulkkinen, he doesn't speak English, like really like a word of English. To get another Finnish prospect to translate for him, and the other Finnish prospect really didn't speak great English. So it's kind of a challenging interview. But what we were able to gather from Combine. He, asked him why he thinks he didn't get drafted last year. And he's like, it just wasn't a good season. And you look at what he was doing. So like you said, he plays in the Finnish league, played in the top league this year. Last year, he spent a lot of time in the U20 league. But then you go back to 2 years ago, the year before his first draft. The scoring kind of disappeared. Like when he was playing in the same system, he was putting up a lot of points, and then he gets up to U20, completely falls off. And then this year in the same U20 team, he's suddenly scoring again, and then he gets called up to the top league, sticks around, and he's doing well. I mean, he made the world junior team for Finland. Playing the Penguins had two other defense prospects there, Pieniniemi and Kalle Kangas. Pulkkinen was on the top pairing. And so I asked Pulkkinen, like, what changed from year one to year two with him? And then, so the other Finnish kid transformed, and he's like, it was the first summer that he worked hard. And then he ended up clarifying later. He never really saw himself as being able to professional hockey thing long term. And then the 20 coach he was playing the national team's U20 kind of sat him down and was like, look, you have your real potential here. Like you could actually maybe make it to the NHL. And just that mindset completely turned his game around. And I mean, yeah, he was putting up great points and like top pairing on the world junior team. That's huge, especially that he was playing above like Pianini, they got in the third round. Kalle Kangas was on the third pairing. So he's really interesting. He didn't meet with the Penguins. He only met with 24 teams. That's not necessarily an indication of interest. Like the Penguins, when they took Pianini last year, they didn't meet with him at the Combine.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, they see that and think, oh, they didn't meet with this guy at the Combine, but there are so many prospects that show up to the Combine and there's only so many hours in the day. And obviously there's teams have their preferences. There's guys that they have more interest in, and then there's guys that they have less interest in. And then we know that the NHL draft, outside of, depending on the year, the top 5, top 10, it is a total crapshoot. There, you think, okay, we're picking at 24. I know the Penguins still don't have a first round pick, but they think, okay, at 24, we want this guy. And then all of a sudden that guy goes at 18. So they may not have met with him, but they have interest. I will say this, though, while it doesn't totally raise a red flag for me, I did get a little squeamish at this was the first summer I worked hard, even though it was more of a coach finally got to him and said, listen, you got some skill here. You can play. If you work at it, you might make an NHL career out of it. So I think it's fair to say this guy is a interesting prospect, but it could be a project.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to gauge like his attitude, just given that he didn't speak English and he was speaking through a prospect who really didn't also speak English. So I think some of that also might have been like lost in translation. Like the first summer he heard, but then he did kind of clarify that like this mindset put in him by the coach. So obviously made great impact on him, given that he did goals in his first draft year. He had like 4 assists. He's like popping last year. So
yeah, so we still got plenty more of prospects to go through here because Taylor has written so many of these. I think it's up to 15, you said. So still a few more I want to touch on, but we do have to take a quick break. But when we come back, we will keep the conversation going about Taylor's prospect interviews and maybe get you excited about a few more people that you could see getting their name called by Kyle Dubas in the Pittsburgh Penguins this weekend. But before we do that, we have to tell you about our first sponsor, and that is eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, we're back here on the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Patrick Damp, joined today by Taylor Haase of DK Pittsburgh Sports. And we're going to keep our conversation going here about Taylor's prospect interview series that she did at the NHL Draft Combine in Buffalo. And one guy that stood out to me here that I do think it might be a little bit of a reach because he has been, as of late, shooting up some draft boards. And that's, I'm going to butcher this name, but it is Stian Solberg. He is a physical defenseman, and he's not very good offensively, but he chips in enough. You look at his counting stats, and they're fine enough for a defenseman. And just to maybe turn some Penguins fans off from this, his biggest comparison is Jacob Trouba. So what did you get interviewing this guy, and how do you feel about him as a defensive prospect?
Like you said, he really shot up the rankings. He might have shot up too far. If any of these guys, that I did profiles in shoot into the first round, I think it's Stolberg. I remember I read, I think several reports that the Leafs got him out. So after the combine, teams can do their own little like stuff back home that's legal. So the Leafs brought out like potential first round picks, and Stolberg was one of the ones they brought out. If he's available, 44, 40, absolutely. Just a well-rounded defenseman, and he can score. He also has only been playing defense for a couple of years. He had one of my favorite personalities of the guys we talked to. Seemed very comfortable talking to media. He was very funny. But then, so someone asked, why did you switch to D? Because he's only been a defenseman for maybe the past 3-4 years. And he is, so he's Norwegian. He was like, our team, we were in a tournament in Sweden. My teammate peed in the bathtub. And then he kind of paused like that story. And we're like, okay, finish. So basically what had happened was it was like the hotel bathtub and this other this Norwegian kid playing defense on their team like pee in the bathtub, not like during the shower, just to do it. And then the coach was doing, I guess, room checks and discovered this and got angry. He said, you can't do that. You're out. Stian, you're playing D tonight. And then he never went back. So crazy story with him. But yeah, just very nasty agitator. Like you said, Trouba is a pretty apt comparison style-wise.
Yeah, that was kind of, and then along with reading your report on him, I did some other digging on him, and you listen to interviews with him, and this guy goes to a real professional league overseas. Like, he's not playing in developmental or some kind of U20 league. And when he gets interviewed, like you said, great personality. He tells that story. Like, I only ended up playing defense because a teammate peed in the tub, which is hilarious. But when he gets talked about playing physical, like, he lights up and he talks about like, oh yeah, I played against this guy who's like 31 years old and I put him through the boards. So, you know, as much as I don't like the players that are just physical to be physical, I think you need to do a lot more. He still has that edge to him, but from watching him some highlights, he's got a little bit of speed. His footwork is solid. What else did you see from him when you looked into him?
I mean, you mentioned the fact that he's played like hockey against men. That's huge, especially for a team like the Penguins who really need their prospects to be ready sooner rather than later. The fact that he's been playing in a top league against men, like you said, like 30s, that's, I mean, huge for him getting comfortable. Maybe should make that transition to the AHL easier whenever he does come over. I mean, he also played for Norway at the World Championship, like a top pairing defenseman. This is not the World Juniors, like the World Championship. He is going to Sweden, so that's nice to see because the Norwegian league is not really that strong. He's moving to the SHL, so that I think would be a great step in his development. He has signed for 2 years. He's not coming over. He's at least going to be in Sweden for the next 2 seasons. Just a really well-rounded defenseman and has that kind of edge that I think a lot of these defense prospects in this range really don't have one, at least not to that level.
Yeah, he was very impressive, and it would be very surprising to me if he fell out of the first round, just because, like we've both said at this point, he's really shot up a lot of draft boards. Obviously, the Maple Leafs brought him in. They've still got their first round pick. So I really would be genuinely stunned if he fell out of the first round. But speaking of D-man, here's one that I haven't really seen any updates on him, at least not for rankings. But it was one when I'm reading everything you wrote about him, I'm surprised that he's kind of ranked in the second round, and that's Cole Hutson of the U.S. development team. This guy set a record for defensive scoring with the developmental team, and while he may not be the biggest guy, I mean, everybody's looking for that, right? So what did you see with him, and are you surprised, or at the very least, have you seen him shoot up draft boards? Because I'd love to get this guy as a Penguin, but I don't see that being a thing.
Yeah, a lot of rankings do have him like right around 44, 46. And Bob McKenzie, SC Hockey had him 41, Elite Prospects 47, Dollar Prospects 51st. So all major ranking services, he is right around there. I don't think he's going to go up that high, and I think the concern he is smaller. He's small, and he can score, but I think there's concerns about every other part of his game. But for a defenseman, 5'10", 165 pounds, that's significant. And he's putting up these points at the junior level. So, but there's concern about, okay, when he goes pro, it's going to get harder, and especially the fact that he's small. What else does he have? So I think that's what, the record sounds nice. So it's best national development team programs, all-time record defensemen. There have been a lot of good defensemen that come through the program, but the way the program works is like they do play in the USHL, but then they also schedule these other games. So year to year, the number of games they play is not always consistent. So a lot of the defensemen who Hutson is outscoring didn't play like anywhere near as many games as he did. And also, do you know whose record he broke? Like who had the record before?
Yeah, it was the former Wilkes-Barre head coach.
Yeah, JD Forrest, who did not have a professional career himself. He was also small, was a defenseman. I think he, bounced around the minors a couple of years and then went over to Finland, Germany. So I wouldn't look at that record and go, he's like the next Erik Karlsson or anything like that. But I mean, it's nice to see. I just think that he's maybe not as well as some of the other defense prospects, and that's why he's kind of low.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see the size being a concern. It's definitely a little jarring when I find out a guy who's maybe about a foot taller than I am and weighs the same and is playing high level hockey. That's probably a concern, especially defense. But I also look at it this way. We have seen so many elite players come out of the U.S. development program over the past decade or so, and you figure they're doing something right. But like you said, you look at that size, you look at that, and all that in general, it feels like a very boom or bust prospect. Like he's either going to hit and he's going to be great, or he's going to follow that same route as Forrest did, where maybe he bounces around the minors for a while, then goes overseas. But would you, if you see this guy available in the second round, maybe with their second pick, because right now they have 44 and 46, would you want to take a flyer on this guy?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of it would depend on who else is available. So I have my draft preview coming out, and that's where I linked all these profiles and I have them ranked. I do have like the lower end, even like within the defense prospects there. I have hit several defense prospects above him. Pulkkinen, like we talked about. The Solberg, who we talked about, even though like it's hard to say whether or not he'll be there, but I mean he's not top defenseman out of the program that I ranked in my list. I don't know if you wanted to talk about him, but EJ Emery, that's who I liked.
Let's leave it there for now because we got to throw to a break here real quick. But when we come back, let's talk about him real quick. And then one other thing I wanted to get a couple quick thoughts from you on. Hunter and I talked about it on the show when it came out. You had also at the Combine a great interview with Penguins president of hockey operations, Kyle Dubas. So with the offseason here, want to see what you think after talking to him and some of the corresponding moves. So stick with us. We will be right back after this break. And now we're going to tell you about our next sponsor, and that is Game Time. It's summertime, and you know how much fun it is going to MLB games, even when the Pirates are struggling at PNC Park. It's a staple of the summer. It's the most fun thing to do in Pittsburgh when the weather's nice. And Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You can pick out any specific game or matchup you'd love to attend. You can find great deals, and you can use features such as customize your spot, last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, and it'll make it very easy to buy MLB tickets for every kind of event in your area. You can get a view from your seat with their seat view and a panoramic view from your seat before you buy. Flash deals save you even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Priority last-minute deals will save you 60% buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, and more. And of course, there's the lowest price guarantee. And if you don't get the lowest price, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time, last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're back here on the Wednesday edition of Locked On Penguins. I'm Patrick Damp. That's Taylor Haase. And you started giving us a little bit of a teaser there for one of your prospects that you've got your eye on. So as I have for the entirety of this show, Taylor, the floor is yours. Tell us some more, would you?
Yeah, EJ Emery, he's after Stolberg. I'm not even really because I would be shocked if he's around at 44, 46. But EJ Emery is maybe the top defense prospect I'd be looking at. U.S. National Team Development Program. like I said, he's right-handed, which that's huge because depending on whether you're considering St. Ivany a prospect, how many right-handed defense prospects do they have? Like Pickering, obviously their top defense prospect, he's a lefty. After that, Beliveau, he's a lefty. They really don't have any defense prospects in general, but then the right side after St. Ivany, it's nothing. He's more of a shutdown defenseman. That doesn't mean he really puts up that doesn't mean he's held off the score sheet. I mean, he had 16 points, all assists in 61 games with the program this year. Led with a +34 rating. The thing about him is his athleticism. I mean, he's got size. He's 6'3", 183 pounds, but the actual fitness testing, it's not like NFL where like they're doing a whole lot of things that translate directly onto the like NFL they run, right? There's nothing on the ice. It's a lot of like jumps and like riding bikes and stuff like that. He finished first in a lot of the jumping and like the agility type things that really measure explosiveness. And he is a really good skater, so that makes sense. He had the third best wingspan. Like, so for a defense to have that reach, and I mean, third best wingspan, that's impressive given that he's not, there are definitely some guys a lot taller than him. There's several guys that are like 6'5", 6'6". But so there, I don't know, there's a lot to like about him. The athleticism, so the jumps they do is just the horizontal jump. It's like a board they jump for. They measure how far they jumped. He nearly cleared the board. Like he was this close to going over the end of the board. And then afterwards, you know, he did his media availability and said, "You almost jump off the board." And he's like, "That was my best jump that I've ever done." He credited the best national team development programs trainer with kind of getting them where he is. But then he's also the son of a football player. His dad, Eric Emery, played in the CFL for a couple of years. Not like a major football player.
Yeah, we don't count the CFL around here.
Well, but he wasn't even like a CFL star. Like it was like, but he did have his son EJ playing football growing up. I asked him, you know, when he stopped playing football. He only stopped at 14. He played a bunch of different positions, but he said he thinks all his football experience helps him now, being able to run things. He said, I think he was like a wide receiver. He's like, when you're getting hit like that, he thinks it prepares him well for hockey. Personality too, but I just like what he brings. They really don't have great shutdown type defensemen. They don't really have defensemen in general. But then he just checks a lot of boxes that they need all in one. So I like that about him, and I just think he would be a good pick if they need a defenseman.
Yeah, if he falls down to the second round, I hope Dubas sprints up to whatever stage they have at the Sphere, calls his name, and they bring him into the system. That would be a great pick. But real quick here before we close out the episode, obviously some of this is now pretty dated with things like the re-signing of Alex Nedeljkovic, the hiring of David Quinn. We now know the Wilkes-Barre coach, but you had a really good interview with Kyle Dubas at the Combine. And the one thing I wanted to focus on, since we're talking about defense, is he had a lot of glowing things, it seemed to say, about people like P.O. Joseph. They brought in Philip Kral, and obviously Jack St. Ivany is back in the fold. Do you get the sense that he's maybe more worried about defense than he is offense going into this offseason? Because I started to get that vibe a little bit. But you obviously, it's a lot easier to figure out the vibe when you're face to face speaking in person than reading the written words. So what did you glean from him about what he's thinking to do this offseason?
Yeah, I didn't get a lot of, I feel either way about what he feels. The guys he talked about were, because I asked about them specifically, just because PO really is their big RFA left. St. Ivany just resigned for 3 years, which is a little uncommon for a guy like him in his position with that limited experience. And then Kral, just because him and Larson, we haven't had the opportunity to talk to Dubas about them, Larson being the Swedish goalie. So that's why he talked a lot about the defensemen, because I was asking specifically about the defensemen. For those that didn't read PO, I just kind of asked like where things stand with them, and he said they have had talks with PO's side. I did end up talking a little bit later to PO's side, who said that everything is smooth. with talks, but there's still like a ways to go with that. There's really no rush. He's RFA. They qualify him. They have those rights. They have a while to figure it out. But he is arbitration eligible, so you figure if nothing's signed by the time that deadline comes around, he will file and it will come to a head eventually. Normally that just puts pressure on the team to come to an agreement because no one wants to go to arbitration. Like the team doesn't want to sit in front of an whoever decides these and rip PO essentially. But he did say a lot of things about St. Ivany. I just kind of asked like what the thinking was that led to them giving him 3. He spoke so highly and how he earned it. Like I don't imagine that St. Ivany starts in the AHL after the way Dubas talks about him. The only thing that like kind of gave you a little feel about what he's thinking. Well, one, I asked if the door's closed on Gensel, and he said the door's not closed on Gensel. But the way he said it was like the player knows the situation if he's interested. So basically putting all the onus on Gensel. I took that as Gensel knowing his cap situation. So if he wants to come back, he knows how much he has to ask for. But as far as moves, so the Pens before re-signing Ned, so a roster of 12 forwards, 6 defensemen. That includes St. Ivany and Pulkkinen and these like cap-friendly Puckpedia weren't including those guys, but 12 forwards, 6 defensemen, and Jari, no Ned. They had like 11 million in cap space. Right now they're down to like half-ish. So I started out asking him, like, you don't have a ton of cap space? Basically asking, like, do you have plans to, I don't know, make any moves to give you more to play with in free agency? It kind of like cut me off, and he's like, well, no, actually, I think we have a whole lot more than, he's like, I think we have more than the public feels that we do. And I mean, he's right, 9 million money. Given that they don't have, he said, he's like, it's not like we have spots to fill. This is before they re-signed Ned, then they re-signed Ned. After that, the only free agents they're really losing, Jeff Carter, I'm assuming Jansen Harkins. At forward, you figure, I don't know, you replace them with, someone internally. Sam Poulin, probably ready. Ville Koivunen, Vasily Panamera, probably they can make pushes. Matt Nieto is only going to be out a little bit, but while he's on long term IR, you bring someone like up. But I mean, you have the money to go out there and bring in a real forward in free agency if they wanted to, and maybe that's top 6. Dayan reported in his Friday Insider weeks ago that really are talking about potentially moving Malkin to wing next season. If you do that, you center. So there's not really great top 6 center options out there in free agency. So maybe that's where a trade come in, and that's where you would move, or you would use that cap space in trade. So I don't know. I just think a lot's on the table because they do have a lot of money to play with.
Yeah, Hunter and I have been saying it pretty much since the season ended that this is going to be, at least in our guessing game, a hectic offseason because while they're still a good team, they are not a contender. They're a team that could make the playoffs, maybe win around, but if they have actual aspirations of getting back to going on deep runs, they've got a lot of moves to make. But that is probably going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. But before we go, Taylor, thank you for coming on. Let everybody know where they can find you, what you got coming up, and how much fun you're going to have in Vegas for the draft.
Might go out the last day in Vegas. That's kind of how these draft things tend to go. They're super busy, then you go out the last night. So we're going to have a lot of fun here in Vegas. But all my stuff is on DK Pittsburgh Sports. We have a Penguins feed that we kind of treat like a social media feed where we put it kind of like updates. But I'm on Twitter, Taylor Haase, PGH. I mean, it's listed at the bottom here. That's where I post all my articles and stuff like that. So I'll have a lot of stuff from Vegas, development camp, free agency, busy times coming up. So that's where you can find it all.
Yeah, we'll certainly be looking forward to it and following all the work because, as I've said, you have been doing a tremendous job covering this team from the NHL all the way down to the ECHL as well as with the prospects. But for Taylor Haase and Hunter Hodes, who is still on vacation, and myself, thank you so much for tuning in. I will be back with another guest, and we're going to talk some more prospects tomorrow with the one and only Jesse Marshall. But for now, thank you as always for tuning in, and we will be back with a new episode on Thursday.